I wish I'd press record even before Dennis Miller got in the Zoom room, because he starts wailing right away, and he never looks back. He crushes me at least 10 times. He gets Scott once, and even gets Holmberg, which wasn't even deserved.
The Caliendo Cast with Frank Caliendo, John Holmberg.
You know what? That's good enough.
Can you do it over? Can you start it over? Can you start it? Can you do it again?
Who's Walter White with the ceiling fan here? What the fuck is that about?
And he can do it. Get into it. Go. He can set it up for you.
We're a fucking family. I can do the dirtiest.
I'll come in with some Ermintrout. Okay, all right. Everything's going to be fine.
Skyler, all you have to do is listen.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, you're loud and clear.
All right, let's go.
All right.
Walter White with a ceiling fan's my favorite thing ever, because why wouldn't he? But that was he's just a little bit warm.
He's a Steeler fan too. Let's go on. I'll tell you a quick Steeler story.
Yeah, get into it.
All right, or maybe we're on. Are we on already?
No, just go. We'll go. We'll just go. You started out. You took the house. Run with it. I don't care.
Frank, geez, I've never seen you out of your professional mode. What is that? A fur blanket there on the? What are you working out of Plato's retreat, for fuck's sake? I thought you'd be in the yellow shag room over there. So good to see you, man.
Okay, so it's John Holmberg, who's a phenomenal radio guy. Even people in comedy, stand-up comedy, who usually hate radio guys.
What's up, Johnny?
How are you, Dennis? Pleasure.
You got to put that fan up. It's chopped your fucking hair off. I see the Steeler logo there. You know, when Rooney won the team way back when, it might be apocryphal, but the story you hear is that he was so broke that the Steelers are the only team with a logo on one side of their helmet because he couldn't afford to replicate it on both sides. So that's why the Steelers have always had the Steeler logo only on one side. Maybe it's true. I'd like to think it is.
All right, so Scott Long is our other participant on one of our podcast partners.
Christ almighty, Scotty Long, John Holmes. What you're running a fucking porn double entendre gig over here.
I mean, this guy comes ready to shoot.
Who is this cat in the ex-Packer? This guy looks like the guy who drafted Sam Congatto a few years ago.
Dennis, we usually have a guy on the show, a young kid. I met him in an airport.
Let me shut this straight. 1 second.
Okay, no problem. So I met a kid, this guy, he's a college student at the Cronkite School of Broadcasting. I met him in an airport. He knew who I was. He said, "Are you Frank Caliendo?" I said, "Yes." And I said, "Do you want to?" After he told me he went to the Cronkite Broadcast School, I was like, "Do you want an internship?" He's got to do a story today, but usually he writes down all the references we make during the show that he doesn't know. And I told him to bring a notebook today. and he's out on assignment. They put him out on assignment. We're going to make him listen back, and he's going to fill up the notebook.
Well, they used to, it's when I was on Monday Night Football, at the beginning, it was like, or I'd say at the beginning around 40% of the country liked me and 60% hated my guts. But one of the kids in the 40% who liked me would do a ibid the next day where he'd break down all the weird references. And then eventually it started to edge up. I'd say I got up maybe to 47 liking me and 53 hating my guts. But that guy stayed consistent. He would always break down all the weird references the one day. I got a great Monday Night Football story I got to tell you, Frank, and Long Dong and fuck these guys are. Johnny Wad. I'm kidding. Love it. Anyway, we're doing a game one night and Chris Carter hurts his ankle. This is how long ago it was. And by the way, nobody worked the field. Nobody got more out of the field than Chris Carter. I mean, he with the feet tap, and the hands, the guy was a beautiful piece of work. Probably the best since Raymond Berry at doing that out route and staying in bounds. So anyway, he hurts his ankle. They're wrapping his ankle on TV. And Al's a genius, Al Michaels, but I used to like, he was like the guy on the Sullivan Show, could spin the plates and keep them all going. Here's the play-by-play, here's the owner's story, here's what's coming up on ABC or whatever station we were on this week, here's the backstory, here's throwing at the foul seat. But if you made him laugh, and I could make him laugh with the weird arcane references, he would kind of get thrown off. So I spent my whole 2 years there trying to get Al off his feet. So they show Chris Carter, he's getting his ankle wrapped on the sidelines. And I say to Al on the air, I go, you know, Al, I haven't seen that much fabric used since the environmental artist Christo wrapped the Pont Neuf Bridge in Paris. And Al hits his sneeze button, which cuts his voice out to the home viewers. He looks at me in the booth and he goes, what the fuck are you talking about? Don Ohlmeyer's down in the truck and he fancies himself an art aficionado. In my headphone, I actually hear Ohlmeyer say, no, Al, Christo, environmental artist, solid reference. That's a solid reference. All right, 36, guys.
Dennis, was there a time, because I remember thinking to myself when you were on Monday Night Football, this is both my favorite thing and will never work, when after a late hit, you said, that hit was later than Godot. And I'm like, this won't work, but no, this is brilliant.
Listen, you got to go out on your own shield. I'll tell you the one problem I did have there, and I don't like it when people don't take the bullet for when they fuck up. I did go in so freaked out at the beginning, thinking, how in God's name have I ended up on Monday Night Football? I did have that surrealistic moment where I prepped too much. But, you know, I look back on it and I think, what are you going to do? I mean, you don't know what you're doing. You're about to be on Monday Night Football. You've been on your couch in your underwear your whole life. All of a sudden, I'm in the booth and I hear dun, 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 and I'm thinking, Christ, this is... So then the next week, I remember thinking, try to write some things out. The worst mistake I made there, because, you know, I'd look and I'd think, well, who's playing? What could you write? That was silly. But I, like I said, I hold myself to a pretty loose thing there, because once you're doing Monday Night Football and you're a comedian and you think, how did I do this? You over prep a little. But other than that, some of the references were good. And I just remember thinking, you know, I remember two teams were playing who did a lot of trading with each other. I said the bloodlines are more intertwined than the Plantagenets. And the next day I got a fucking moron like Rudy Martzke, whose head they can barely fit into the shit little photo at the top of his collar. All of a sudden he's at the Algonquin table. I think, I'm so fucked here. I'm gone. If this is the guy I'm going to have to shoot this through, this vapid Stargate. So yeah, I knew I wasn't long for the planet. I decided to go out on my shield.
Yeah.
And sports,
hey, Frank,
one of the things about sports and doing comedy in sports, it's a totally different audience than doing comedy for a comedy audience. Yeah. I've lived with that for 20 years, I guess now, that you go out and do comedy for a sports audience and they're like, we're here for sports first. You better be really good. And this kind of goes with what you said, over prepping. When I was at Fox and we did the sketches with Scott Long helped write. Scott Schlong, which is his morning.
It's catching.
When we were the only thing that was planned comedy in the show. And the funniest moments of the NFL on Fox, the pregame show, was Terry Bradshaw screwing up or Howie Long saying the wrong word. And then from reality, from authenticity, the laughter would come from them ripping each other. When we came in with a pre-taped segment, it was hard. And I think it's very similar to what you were saying there. You would come in with pre-planned thoughts and you're like, I'm pushing these in. It's like Walton throwing in get left shrimp. I mean, that's the tough thing, you know. That was Tom Tolbert that told me that he said, Tom Tolbert said, just work in get left shrimp. Because he would just say that's the best player, you know, on the court. John had one that I was on the way to Mike and Mike one morning.
Detlef Shrimp, by the way, is whatever his country, whatever German. I think it's German for big dick. Do you have anybody in your life who is not a double entendre for dick? You've introduced me to Buck Johnson. I voted for Dick Army. What the fuck is going on over there?
Well, I was on the way to Mike and Mike one morning. I didn't have anything new for Bill Walton.
Mike and Mike is code for testicles. Anyway, go ahead.
And Holmberg had this line that Bill Walton actually said, "The entire arena rising as one," and that I threw that in there that one time. But it's those ridiculous references, that type of stuff that just, I don't know.
Best college basketball player I've ever seen. I know he had ped problems in the show, but that game against Memphis State, and I think Larry Finch threw down for north of 40 himself. I've never seen a more perfectly played basketball game. The big man was beautiful. He'd get it into the post and just deflect, pass it back out. He was, well, literally not the best pro, but it didn't play out. He had a great year there with Portland, but Bill Walton's the best college basketball player I ever saw.
He was 21 for 22 from the field in that game. 21 of 22 in the championship game. Then ESPN has this bullshit top player in the history of college basketball, and Michael Jordan's towards the top, and Walton's out in the second round.
No.
And of course, it's all just millennials and young people picking it. It's like Bill Walton was the greatest, unless it's Kareem. It's one of those two guys for college basketball. Lou Alcindor, who never lost a game, or Bill Walton. It had to be one of those two.
And it's beautiful after Kareem is, Lou at that point is a freshman. He so devastates that they have to get rid of and the sky hook is birthed. Boy, the unintended consequences of that. They put him down as the greatest scorer ever the moment they said you can't dunk. And that sky hook, Jesus, that is so beautiful when you think about it. It's like Carlton's slider that year. It's like MJ's or Timmy Hardaway's crossover. There's a few moments where you just go, that's as good as that's going to get. And by them not allowing the big man from Power Memorial to dunk, they birthed the sky hook. Beautiful. I like my man over here from the Packers. Oh, Pacers! Are you kidding me? When I was a kid, I had season tickets. They were like $35 for a kid to the Pipers, and I used to follow Big Mel Daniels and Roger Brown. That was the squad. Neto, and they had a hell of a team over there. I think Daniels and them were the Minnesota Muskies one year, but then they went down and played in Indiana, didn't he? He was great.
Yeah, and Roger Brown and Connie Hawkins were. It's an amazing story. If anyone wants to look this up, they were the two best players in New York high school basketball. They never bet or took any money really for throwing a game, and they never had an NBA career for 8 years because some gambler got thrown in. So Roger Brown, who would have been a superstar in the NBA, has to play for the Pittsburgh Pipers, which is a terrible name.
No, the Hawk did, and the Hawk was Dr. J before.
Yeah, that's right.
J was.
Oh,
yeah,
he was
Connie Hawkins.
I saw every one of, and I'm telling you what the beauty of it was. They had Artie Hyman came over, the old glue man from Duke, and he played like Billy Bradley off the ball. He never quit running. We had good players: Tom Washington, Chico Vaughn, Charlie Williams, and the Hawk. We had a good coach, Vince Cazzetta, but they didn't have the glue guy who didn't need the score. Art Heyman came over. I'm always so happy for him because in his head, he probably always thought, I've got this. I just can't get the shot. He came over and was a thing of beauty, and we won the first year. It was some of my great memories. When I see the Indiana Pacers thing, man, that gave me goosebumps. Who's right behind your head? Is that soccer?
Yeah, it's just like a Wembley Stadium photo and a U.S.
Soccer's exciting. It's great. It's the best.
Yeah. Well, this is a Pittsburgh Pipers podcast. I don't know if you knew that.
I was going to Frankie. What happened to? Did Frank leave?
I had a.
Huh? Don't you have some noontime thing where you go play George Hamilton in old folks' home for people, make a couple bucks?
Little Zorro the Gay Blade.
And tell the bald guy not to lean over and show me the top of his fucking head like that. I think I saw 3 6s.
So there's a legendary story about you as you started doing stand-up comedy. And I want to find out if that was true, because people would talk about, you would go out on the road. And this is different club owners and comics telling me this as I was coming up. They say Dennis Miller would come through. He would do his bits, and people would accuse you of stealing stuff.
Yeah.
And that is true?
Well, it's when I got to LA, and I got to give Seinfeld this. He's so beautiful. I haven't talked to Jerry in a while. It's weird how life takes you, but Jerry was always, listen, before Jerry was Jerry was Jerry. He was always so smooth and he knew his place. I remember one night telling Jerry he had come back from the Great Gorge Playboy Club. He did Laney Kazan room out there. I met him at the comic store. It's like 2:30 in the morning. We're having a burger. And he goes, read it, weep, boys. He pulls out this check for like $300 or something to do a gig. And we're all like, $300? Christ, I didn't make that last year. So I say to Jerry, then I get SNL and I go do a cruise. And I think I get $750 a night for 2 nights out to Bermuda and back. And I say to Jerry, hey, brother, I made $1,500 on this cruise. Maybe you ought to try one of these. He looks at me, he goes, you know, I've never felt the need to vacation with my audience. even when we were broke, Jerry had the tune. So, but anyway, I go to LA and I'm working in Pittsburgh at a place called the Pittsburgh Comedy Club. Guys are coming through. I'm not saying listen, I was rough, but I had some good jokes. They're like mining me and going back to LA. In particular, I don't know if I should say his name. It doesn't really mean much down the road, but I also don't want. I'm not going to say his name because I don't want to go outside the. I hate it when what stays in the locker room stays in the locker room.
Sure.
The comedian goes back to LA and he's doing my jokes and at the Improv. I move out there. I go up on stage and I come off stage and Bud. I don't know. Do you cats know Bud Freeman or is that too early? Mm-hmm. Bud's standing there. He's got a fucking monocle in. Christ, I'm taking notes from a guy in monocles. Like I'm in an acting class with Werner Klemperer. He calls me over and he says, listen, young man, I don't know who you think you are, but you're doing my regulars material. And I said, oh, I'm sorry. So I don't think so. I go, what jokes? He mentions a few jokes. It's this guy has nicked me completely, come back to LA. Seinfeld walks down that hallway there. It's like there's a hallway between the main room and the bar. Jerry walks there, he goes, what's the problem, Bub? And he goes, he's stealing Bubba da Buzz jokes. And Seinfeld says, oh, for Christ's sake, you could wake this kid up from a coma, he'd write better than that guy. He saved me. But by staying in Pittsburgh, and I was so shy, and I never wanted to try it. But eventually when I did, I found out that a couple guys had strip mined some jokes and taken them back.
Is Seinfeld that quick? I've only thought of Seinfeld as writing material, and 2 things that you said are off the cuff and, just.
Well, listen, Jerry is one of the, I'm trying to think, Hedberg's up there. He's one of the 3 greatest writers I've ever seen.
Really?
Gary Shandling is a great writer, quick writer. Jerry's a great writer. But Jerry, just in his regular métier, is about as cool as it gets. I mean, really. And the fact that he laughs at stuff so well tells you how firm he is in his footing as far as being, a great. Who laughs better than Jerry? When I used to light Jerry up, nothing made me felt better than to make Jerry Seinfeld laugh that hard, where he'd say, stop. See, no, he's quick. He's somebody sent me a tape. He's on Howard Stern saying, Stern asked about me. He said, I don't know. I guess he doesn't quite say lazy, but it hints at that. And I cop, guilty. I never wanted it as bad as some men. I just don't work as hard as I used to. But in our time when we were starting out, there was a group of guys who would hang together, Marr and Jerry, George Wallace, Jimmy Brogan, and we'd all eat at a diner, I remember, up by Catch Your Rising Star. It had green and white lattice work, and Jerry was always so funny. I mean, just killer. Yeah, he's quick. He's quick.
Yeah, because I always think of him as the monologist with a written word, and I don't think of him as just being so snappy.
Yeah, well, quit pissing on him, Frank. Get some fucking sound towels. You ran out of money before you could complete the sound wall behind you? What's the little you jag off? I'm telling you, he's quick, for Christ's sake. I'm defending Jerry Seinfeld. I'm telling you, he's quick. Don't dig your eye out. I know it's Oedipal, but I'm telling you, the guy is quick. You'll have to take my word on it. No, Seinfeld's slow. He learns this stuff phonetically. He's like Mr. Ed in a fucking barn. He has to knock these jokes out with his hook. I'm telling you, he's quick.
Oh, well, that's the. Thanks for joining us.
All right, Frankie. What do you got to go over now and piss on no coward? What's your deal? He's a wit.
Oh, I just find it amazing. I am doing exactly what I didn't want to do, and just sitting here listening because I enjoy it so much.
Why not? Why don't, listen, are we wrapped up? Did you say we got to go?
No, I'm lying. I was making that.
Oh, okay.
Hey,
No.
Dennis,
I didn't know you were that quick. All right, what do we got here?
Now here's another question. Okay, so how many brothers do you have?
2.
Okay, so all 3 brothers, people don't know, one of your brothers, huge Hollywood agent. The other brother booked all these comedy clubs. What's the deal with your family when you've analyzed it? Why all 3 brothers? I mean, they were all successful in comedy in different routes.
Well, I don't know. I got into comedy first, and then my brother Jimmy. And listen, either of those 2 cats could be comedians. Flat out, stoned, killer, funny. We've got the same voice in a weird way.
Rich never finishes a word. He's like, "Hey, I got $500 for a gig in Albuquerque."
Yeah, I used to work for him, and it would be like, "Oh my gosh, this is like Dennis," but you're right. He doesn't finish his lines.
It's all half words. It's 50%, and you're going, I don't have a Miller. I need the Rosetta Stone for Miller's here, Chachi. Somebody go back to ancient Egypt and crack the code for me, Billy. I'm on fire here. Caliendo's calling Seinfeld slow, and now I'm visiting the Love Sack store trying to figure out what's happening.
There's my act right there, my entire career. I remember once I got a call from Michael Douglas. He was at the Venice Film Festival, and he calls me and he says, "Listen, I'm on the bridge of Sighs. I'm with this crazy bald motherfucker all day thinking, how do I know this guy? He's making me laugh so hard." All of a sudden I turn just because I can't see him, but his rhythms are so in my head. And I go, "Are you Dennis's brother?" And he says, "Yeah." So Jimmy, we have the exact same rhythms. Rich is a little more Midwestern, but listen, I think Jimmy went over, Jimmy's genius. Jimmy's a huge player. He was on Jim Carrey before anybody else. Shepherd him through. He's funny, and he's always so smart. I remember saying to my little brother once, imagine your little brother who used to give Indian head rub to, oh, I know, Native American head rub. Don't fucking go on a ledge. No, wake the fuck up. So anyway, your little brother, all of a sudden, one time I said, why don't you go over and see Judd on the set of a film? He represents Judd. And he said, I don't usually like to go on the sets of their films. And I said, what's that about? And he said, listen, I don't want them to think that I think I'm creative. I'm happy being their manager. He said, I don't want to nibble on that turf. Too many guys they hang in the periphery of it and try to, glean some reflected glory off the cookies there. Fuck that. He said, I'm their manager. And he said, the less time I spend there, the more it looks like I'm all for them. I always thought, imagine your little brother saying that. I said, Jesus, Jimmy, that is so smart. And then my other brother, Rich, got into it much later. But I'll tell you what, they're trusted. Their words, they're bond, those 2 guys. I'm a little more standoffish than them. I don't think people might ascribe that to me, but I think that too is they won't lie to you. And so I think my brothers have done well because the word is their bond, and they're not real squares, and they're hip enough to know when it's time to flick the jab, and they flick the jab. So I'm really proud of them. They're sweet cats.
So with the speaking rhythm, is that in any other part of your family too, your parents, or is that just something you guys developed?
You know what? I got that in the mid to late 70s. Richard Belzer stood astride the stage at Catch a Rising Star like a latter-day sardonic colossus of Rhodes, man. The ships had to go between his legs. It was so fucking beautiful and powerful. And I watched Belzer up there one night, and I had like 8 alchemies go off. The staccato burst was beautiful, or not alchemies, 8 illuminations go off in my head. The staccato burst worked well. He didn't suck up. He made them come to him. He gave off that subtle tone that, listen, here's what I do. And it's like a woman who ignores you. It's intoxicating. So I got that sort of rapid burst off Belzer. And I also got the thing. It's like Carlin told me he got it once. He's out there in his, Carlin's in his chimp suit on Sullivan, doing the world looks wonderful from here. And all of a sudden he says, fuck it. And he goes, Oak Ridge Boys. And he comes out, tie-dyed, loaded and hip. And he takes over the world. You have to have that moment. And when I watched Belzer and how little he kissed ass to the crowd, it went off in my head. I could never be like Belz because he was Anton LaVey, man. He was the Dark Prince. But I do remember thinking, don't act needy with them. They don't need needy off you. They need alacrity. They need some sort of flourish, scaramouche. They want to follow you here. So don't be an ass kisser. They get enough ass kissers in their life. They just came from an office job where they watched some drip go by them at the speed of light because they knew what asses to kiss. Come up here and either be good or be bad, but don't suck up. So I get a lot of it from Belzer, especially that Now that the meter came from SNL because I wrote the news with a guy named Herb Sargent. And I couldn't write earlier in the week something about my cat's paws had to be dangled over the precipice for me to get scared shitless. And around Friday at 4:00, I'd think, you fuck 3 of these up in a row, man. Whitney Brown's got it, or you're co-hosting or something. You better get it together here. And so when I would be stuck certain weeks for jokes, I had a big thing on my wall out of construction paper. It said, indignation, what am I, arcane reference. And whenever I'd get stuck on a joke, so that's why there's a 3-pronged iambic pentameter to the joke. Ba-ba-da-ba, fulcrum, ba-ba-ba-da-ba. It's like Carvey always said. He called it Morse Miller. It's sort of like a pissier version of Charlie Brown's parents. But it was definitely in my head, that meter.
How many people tried to stop that early in your career where they're like, this doesn't work. You're playing Jeopardy with the audience.
Oh, nobody. Listen, like I said, I'm a bit of an outlier. I didn't give big openings for people to come in and tell me what I was doing. I watched too many audiences laugh at how many Rwandans can you fit in a phone booth, all of them. You know what I mean? I've seen audiences fall out at that. And I remember looking at that and thinking, well, they're not my arbiter. I mean, this for,
right.
I got to be the guy. I'll go out on my shield if I have to.
Right.
But I didn't leave the sort of openings where people said, I don't solicit avuncular. I remember sitting with Drake Sather one night. Do you remember the great Drake Sather?
Yeah.
Awesome.
He was beautiful, beautiful, sweet soul. It breaks my heart. But I remember sitting one night and Jay was at the upstairs level. And I love Jay. But, Jay's like the avuncular grandad. He's like Yoda or something. So he's sitting up there. He's got that fucking Arthur Conan Doyle pipe and a straw hat. And he's laying down his 10 precepts of comedy. Yeah, you always tell your best 7 jokes on the shot. What are you saying for the next shot? You get the shit. He's laying down all the 95 theses. And Drake Sather's sitting in the back. And I was more like him as far as sharing it at the end. He goes, you know what I mean, fellas? And Drake takes a hit on his cigarette. He goes, thanks, Jay. I got a dad. It's wiped me out. So as far as anybody saying, I want to take you aside, listen, all I had was the Arcania. Listen, I remember Shecky Green came back one night, and maybe there's one guy, not Shecky, Buddy Hackett came to my dressing room once in Vegas. And I do remember him saying, dang it, funny, but why do you dip into the blue ink? Because I said, fuck. And I said, buddy, I've heard you drop the C word when a waitress spills a drink, for Christ's sake. All of a sudden, you're going to come in and tell me. I didn't take advice well. I tried to be polite about it, but what are you going to do? It's I'm skydiving here. I got to pack my chute.
Buddy Hackett is not the guy to take advice from. I was Barry Katz's wedding. Do you know Barry Katz?
Yeah, sure.
Unbelievable, man. You should hear Dennis Miller string these things together. The references are unbelievable. But let me just say this, Dennis, and it's amazing what you've done with your career. You start out as a young man in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. We're going to do the whole thing day by day. You're at Point Park University, learning, becoming who you'd eventually become, Papa. unbelievable. And then you get Saturday Night Live, and Frank Sather tells Jay Leno to basically fuck off.
I remember Buddy Hackett, he's standing there in front of me acting like he's Pliny the Elder. His fucking eyes are like the opening credits for North by Northwest. I'm thinking, Christ, I'm taking notes from a crazy man.
Buddy Hackett took a drink and destroyed a Beatles tribute band's entire music setup and was like, what was with that fucking rabbi? Because the rabbi kept talking about divorce at Barry's wedding. He's like, what's with the fucking rabbi? And he just throws, and you just hear like, hey, Jew. Just completely destroyed. But he was a maniac. I mean, for him to be, that's so funny when people give advice that have no reason to be giving. It's like Rodney Dangerfield. You got to keep yourself clean, kid. Like, what are you? Wrong guy. No.
Yeah.
Listen, I have a book of Buddy Hackett poetry. I'm not kidding you. A cat named Jose Arroyo, who used to work with me when we were on HBO, he went over. I think he ended up on Letterman for years. Great writer, and his going away gift, he bought me a slim tome of Buddy Hackett's poetry. And I'm telling you, man, it makes E.E. Cummings look like R. Lee Ermey. It's so funny.
Right there, John. John had a great question that he was like, we got to ask this question. Ask that question, John.
I was going to say, because you take me back to the 4th grade and the day the teacher introduced similes to you, and you just said, that's it, I fucking got it. I'm making money here. This is it.
My chimp trick, brother. I'm telling you, similes come to me like
oh, that's great.
they come to me. What can I say?
Wait a second. Was that planned? Or
yes, it's planned.
Okay, I'm making sure.
Christ almighty, you know, he doesn't really saw the chick in half, Copperfield, right? Christ, it's like I'm talking to Bambi. Wake the fuck up. You're in show business.
I know. I thought it was a joke. I just want to make sure because I can't think of stuff.
Christ, I haven't seen somebody come up and tidy this up since the end of the Rocky and Bullwinkle show with a whisk broom. Get it together.
Yeah, does it intentionally, like, do you realize what you do to the audience when somebody gets your reference and you know that's a deep pull, and it makes people feel better than laughing?
Listen, I always wrote the mothership joke for everybody. The next one in was for people who fancied themselves the cognoscenti. The third one in was for me and one other guy. That's the sweet spot you're talking about. I'd always hear a solo laugh and look at him. The fourth one, even I didn't fucking get. The fourth one, was like Renfield, out.
Yeah, I remember. Go ahead. I was going to say, I remember being in a room of people who I thought were funny, and you were the litmus test. And we were watching something, and you were doing an interview, and I used this line every time we did it just yesterday on the podcast when I said the thing, and I didn't even hear the joke, but at the end you said, "Where's the body, Thorwald?" And I dropped out because I knew you're going rear window, and everybody in the room, and one guy goes, "He's dumb," and I'm like, "None of you are my friends anymore. Fuck that. You don't get it." And I based a lot of that stuff off the idea that there's certain people that you're targeting, and you're isolating them out of the audience almost purposefully.
Well, listen, I always strive for longevity. I find showbiz a complete goat fuck and an unreliable one. And man, I never looked at the far shore. I'm looking for the next lily pad to stay unwet. And so therefore, when I would think, what should I shoot for here? I was never going to be mass. I wasn't going to be for the masses. It's not my monkey trick. I get it. So I thought, well, I got to work the mean line. And the further I stray off the mean line, either way, the more screwed I am. So listen, a bit of it's just a caprice. I don't take it that. I don't want people to sit here and, think like I'm Larry Sanders watching the show a couple hours later and going over it like this Bruder film. But you do got to think about it. And I remember thinking at some point they shouldn't get everything. And it's not because it's precious. It's not because it's special. But I'm telling you, it's not like I sit here and write E.E. Cummings, R. Lee Ermey, that comes up. That's my one thing. And when I was young, it used to drive me crazy because I couldn't shut it off. And then I got to a point where I remember steering into the skid on something I couldn't get out of my head. and think, you know, like where I'd think I can't shut my mind off. A lot of comedians have that thing, or a lot of lyricists, or a lot of film editors. I remember thinking, okay, deliberately try to keep that in your head for the rest of your life. There, go ahead, keep that in your head. Try for the rest of the. It's funny, you have to steer into the skid to heal yourself of obsessive compulsive disorder, I think. And then you see you're not going to do it for the rest of your life, and the fear falls away. The fear is the thing that manifests itself, and therefore I don't think like it all the time. But when I get on when I'm on a podcast with other guys who I want to make laugh, when I'm sitting here thinking, oh, I'm with players now. Yeah, I just I take the hobble off. What do they call it when they put it on a thoroughbred, and you just let them run, you know? And then when I get off, I'll take like a half an hour and then wind down, and then I'm back to Squaresville.
See, when you were first on SNL, I didn't get what you were doing when I was younger. I watched it the first time. I went back, probably college or something, watched some more and go, I missed, because I didn't understand Dennis
You know,
Miller.
Dana was the church lady. That wasn't an actual woman. That's your fucking hero.
No,
he put an outfit on and was a lady.
I went back and watched with a big fur blanket on, and I was like, this is just brilliant. And it was the fact that you didn't care if the audience laughed or not. And the only person I know that was as good at that was Norm Macdonald, because Norm would just go out there and and that was because of O.J. Simpson. And it didn't matter, but he just sit there and let it go. And
well, Norm's one of my dearest friends, and one of the few guys I'll ascribe genuine genius to. I hope I can find this email that Norm sent me. I was in the Himalayas a couple months back, and I finally got cell. I was way out in Bhutan. And I said, I've got to call somebody here.
Wait, are you living a reference? Like you're in the Himalayas? I mean, it's like I'm in the Himalayas looking at an email from Norm.
Who can I call from Bhutan? And I sent Norm a message. He sent me back within 30 seconds, and I can't believe I'm not going to be able to find it now. The absolutely craziest thing I've ever read. And you guys talk amongst yourself for 1 second, because I know this is awkward, but if I find this, you'll howl because he's so funny.
Yeah, we could just do Norm the whole time.
Yeah, you know, like I remember when he called me up. You know, it's like
he was.
What the fuck are you doing in Bhutan? You know, we're supposed to have lunch tomorrow. And,
yeah. You ever been to the grocery store in Bhutan? You ever been there?
Yeah, they got like a whole aisle of cock.
Oh, I can't find it. I'm telling you, if I had this together, but I don't know how to use technology all that well. But I just said, Norm, I'm in Bhutan, up on a mountain. How are you? And he wrote back, and he said, honor the mother mountain, you must drink, and then defend a whore. And I came back. He said, you'll kill a goat somewhere near the mountaintop, and you must sacrifice him, and then offer some of the sacrificial juice to your Sherpa. And then if he takes it, just went on and on. It was like the craziest thing. And I feel so disappointed. I'm doing it a disservice. But I said to my wife, the fact that this came back within 3 minutes absolutely boggles my mind.
yeah, that's hilarious.
Well, Dennis,
Wait, did I ever tell you my quick Norm story about hiring him?
No.
I'm in LA. I've got a talk show. Christ, I've had a lot of shows shot out from under me. I've got a talk show, and Eddie Feldman, who's a dear friend, my head writer, comes in. He said, hey, I heard a joke that's absolutely brilliant from a kid who just moved here from Canada. And the joke was, I feel sorry for the homeless guy, but I really feel sorry for the homeless guy's dog, because the dog's thinking, this is the longest fucking walk I've ever taken. We eventually go in somewhere, because I can do this on my own, which is just one of the great jokes ever. So I think, I said, well, is he new in town? I go, what's his name? He goes, Norm Macdonald. I go, we'll see if he wants to write for the show. That's just one of the greatest things I've ever heard. Eddie sends him out a standard thing from a head writer saying, will you submit a packet? And Norm writes back that he doesn't submit packets, which is so beautiful. He said, but I'll give you one joke, and if you want to hire me, fine, and I understand. He sends this joke. The beginning of the joke the whole dissertation part up front is almost AP copy about Jeffrey Dahmer and how grim it was, and very detailed stuff about surgically removing the gallbladder, and but it's like a Hannibal Lecter diary notation or something. And then the last part of the joke is Norm gallops in with, in his defense, Dahmer said they started it. I hired him, and I put him and Drake in the same room together.
And they became best friends, didn't they?
Oh yeah, they tinfoiled the windows. It was all dark in there. And I remember knocking on their door once. This was at the beginning of the show around, I think we shot at 3:30. It was 1:30. I hadn't heard from them. Okay, hey boys, anything today? And very nicely, they're not attitudinal. They just say, we're better. We'll slip it out under the door. And is this when you'd want it every day? They were very cooperative. Yeah, we're okay. We'll slip it out. And I was a good boss. Whatever anybody needed to sidle up to their muse. I'm not. Christ, what am I? Darren McGavin and Tribes. I don't give a fuck what they do. So they'd push this stuff out, man. And there were probably 10 jokes between the two of them. 8 of them were the most brilliant stuff I've ever read, but completely unusable. One of them, I remember thinking you'd read a joke, go, Christ, am I going to go to hell for perceiving that joke? And then one of them was just perfect. I mean, just perfect stuff. David Feldman, I don't know if you remember Feldo, just perfect jokes. What did Feldo tell me one time? He said, Feldo would write jokes that were so perfect, I would not use them. That's one thing I always did with writers, because I always thought this is a weird trip that they're writing for me. These guys are geniuses. Listen, I'm not a slacker as far as a writer, but I also want to be a mensch. If they handed something in that was for the ages, I would say to a writer, you keep this. I don't want to do this. I'll feel weird and conflicted about doing this. Feldo would send in jokes like, I think English is the creme de la creme of languages. I said, that's as few words as you can use to write a perfect joke. I can't go near that. When the writers went on strike, David Feldman walked on the picket line holding a sign that was blank. It's perfect.
Did you ever have a writer on that? I mean, the show you had, the talk show, was so crisp and so well done that it almost felt like it was 50 people writing. Did you ever have a writer on there that you're like, this guy is so brilliant and never really got the credit? Like the guy that, I mean, somebody that just sits in your mind that says, my God, he's a behind the scenes master.
I think I had 5 writing staff, and Kevin Rooney, he gets credit. Everybody knows how brilliant Rooney is. Jose Arroyo. There was the guy who ended up inventing King of the Hill wrote there for a while. And then a cat who ended up, I'm bad with names and all that. But Leah Krinsky was a genius, and that writing room, it's so funny. We live in diminished times in that if anybody had heard what went on in that writing room, everybody's career would be dead. They'd probably be in jail. But I'm telling you, I used to sit sometimes in that room and just watch it fly. And I felt like, I felt like Curly Neal in the circle at the beginning of a Globy game. Just like, boom.
Yeah.
Just geniuses. I mean, how many in this comedy business, a little more than you'd think. I remember Seinfeld used to always have that theory of, he said, the universal theory of comedic constancy is in any given moment, the number of comedians increases by a power of 10 every year. He said the number of truly funny ones remains constant at 37. And I've met a lot of those 37, man, and you walk away just go, wow, that is a switched on. When I first saw Hedberg, I thought there's a switched on cat right there.
Do you have a favorite part of your career? Is there something that you look at?
Yeah, I'm not like that, Frank.
You don't care?
It's no Sword from the Stone shit, not John Norman Howard racing my car too fast. It's a job. I like writing jokes. If I had a favorite part, it would be that when when players would say they'd include me. That meant something to me. When I first met George Carlin and he saw me before I saw him, and he walked across the room and said he dug it.
Oh man,
That's what I remember. You know what I mean? Stuff like that. But as far as and Carson, the first time I met Carson was pretty big. I'll tell you a good moment in my career. I was hosting a young comedian special, and I was the host, and I'm in my makeup chair, and my makeup lady looks like she's had a mini stroke or something. And I look in the mirror, and Bowie came down to see me, and that just wiped me out. He said, you make me laugh. So there's a few like that, but as far as favorite part, job-wise, no. I'll take whatever job I have and try to do the best at it. I like to make a living, and I like to keep it on the down low as far as what it means, because it means nothing. It means you got lucky. You have some trick you can turn in for green rectangles and provide meat for your head hole. That's all it is, man. I've met a lot of noble people in my life who never got a second in the limelight, who are actually doing shit. I met Dr. Heimlich once in Cincinnati at a talk show, and I'm in the green room, and this is a little cat sitting there. I go, hey, how are you, brother? And I go, I'm Dennis Miller. He goes, I'm Dr. Heimlich. And, I go, Dr. Heimlich? And he goes, I didn't ask for it to be named after. I'm not kidding. So when I see people beating their drum over, a TV shot, you just go, what are you fucking kidding me? This guy invented, arguably, along with Bill W., one of the most life-saving human, keeping families together, all that. And then his first thing was he didn't want you to feel that he was self-aggrandizing.
He didn't want top billing for the maneuver?
Well, or as the Me Too movement calls it, the Heimlich come on. But I don't find showbiz, listen, it's fun, Frank. Christ, I was a square kid. Yeah, you know what I mean? Did you ever think you'd be in it? It's fun.
No, I had no idea. But listening to you now, the ability for you to not give a shit, that I'm constantly worried that I'm going to go over a line and be politically incorrect. And even when I'm trying not to, it happens. And then, for you, you can kind of brush it off. Or you do brush it off. I watch that. And I go,
as it happens more, Frank, I'm a human being, but I got pretty good rhino skin. But when you read people who wish you dead, you're a human being. But up to a point, you got to see who's wishing you dead. You know what I mean? It's not like, it's not like Steven Pinker's wishing me dead. You got fucking morons who are jerking off in their basement. They take 5 seconds off from jerking off to wish you dead. Well, how much fucking sanctity can you apply to it?
Hey, at least they're taking a little time off.
Exactly.
Multitasking would be
right. It's hating me's like crop rotation, so their knob doesn't fall off.
Well, even watching the Hannity thing the other day, and then people come in like yesterday going crazy. I used to go on Fox News all the time, just the morning show, and do it, and I couldn't take it anymore. Even just to go on what's the Fox and Friends. I used to do that. I'd have a good time. I'd do some jokes, and then I'd get crushed the next day, and they just label me completely, and I'm walking away going, I'm just trying to entertain everybody. But I couldn't take it. I had to get out. You seem to be able to.
Well, you should be too, Frank. For Christ's sake, I'm telling you, and anybody I know who knows you thinks you're great at it. There's a whole horde of people out there whose creativity, the thing you do with your voices and your comedy, or I do with my lines and my comedy, they're doing that is pissing on yours. And I hate to hear that from you. It's fucking not cancer, man. You got to man up a little. Fuck that. Everybody out there is hated by the people now. There's a whole cadre of hate. Hate is the coin of the realm. And then you're too smart to adhere to that. I don't give a fuck at some point. Christ, a Russian weather satellite could fall out of orbit in the next 3 minutes and cleave my fucking think box. Am I supposed to give a fuck about some agoraphobic living in a fucking tater cellar out in Manitoba who hates my guts? Wake the fuck up, Frank.
changed me. You fixed me. I'm done.
Yeah.
It should. It's like Werner Erhard years ago when I was so neurotic and my pain was so precious in my 20s. He had a discipline called EST. And there was nothing to EST except he'd say, you have to get it. And I remember thinking, what's he doing there? It's almost beautiful in a way because it is the last Tumblr click. You have to get it about life. There's not going to be any magic thing. You get it. We spend so much time telling ourselves that we don't helm the ship that we believe that bullshit. The next time you do something on TV and are afraid what they're going to say, you should read it for around an hour. Look at it. And like Anthony Burgess, Malcolm McDowell, your way out of it. Keep your eyes open and read it. It's bullshit. It's the times we live in. In its own way, it's valid approbation. You're angering the right people, for Christ's sake. And you have to keep an open mind about being hated by the closed-minded. That in its own is the red badge of courage. Come on, Frank, get it on. What are you, like 50 now?
Holmberg's been living by that the same way.
Yeah.
The ball guy.
Yeah, well, my whole radio life has been, even at a 20 share in the mornings, 80% of the city hates me. So you have to fucking look at it like, I don't care if they like me or not. I've got a good thing going. I know I'm all right at it. The day I realized it was my ex-girlfriend was in the World Trade Center, she got out, but we didn't know it. And I told that story as open as I could tell it once I knew all the details the next time I was on. And I remember hearing, you're arrogant and making this about you. And I'm like, fuck you. I just didn't care. And that's when it all sparks for you for a second.
Win.
Like, I don't need to know these people. These are the people I want to go away. And I'll invite you to leave before I'll ever try to win you over. I just don't want to.
Frank, listen, you're going to keep up that pussy guys you've got. I hope this guy puts the long knife in on you on the show, Donna.
That's what I'm doing the podcast.
Right, that's what you're supposed to think.
No, I've been getting better at it. I've been getting way, way better. It's one of the things where that's what the podcast is about for me, to actually speak who I am and talk about where I come from on things. And generally on this podcast, we fall a little bit more kind of libertarianish. We're all a little socially a little bit more to the left and fiscally to the right and somewhere like, but we're common sense. And it seems like common sense has just gone away so much. But I don't know. I used to get so scared, but
Here, Frank, let me send some unguentine through the screen. Wake up. You're sinking in the shot, by the way. What are you in?
I know.
Every time I look over, Christ, all of a sudden you're Martin Sheen coming up from the water in Apocalypse Now Redux. Sit the fuck up.
He looks like he's in a dorm room futon. Where are you? I've never seen this room.
You know, Dennis, I was talking to these guys before, and I'm thinking, and they know, Frank knows this, you and George Carlin and Hicks were the reason I started doing comedy. It was about 1991. I was one of those dudes. You know, there was about 1,000 of us going across the country wearing a leather jacket like Hicks, trying to do acerbic lines like you, and dreaming we could be Carlin. And, you know, it doesn't work out quite that way. But I'm thinking of your career. No one was more popular with liberal critics than you. And then, in my opinion, and did such a shift, even though I don't think your act shifted that much, but you said 10 jokes that they didn't like, and all of a sudden they looked at you like Bob Dylan after he did the Christian album. You know, it was just like they jumped off the wagon with you. What was that like? I mean, your audience, I'm guessing, shifted. Did you do different stuff, or you just said, hey, this is me and this is where my head's at now? Or
You've led me to an interesting place in this interview, because it's very infrequently you find the exact moment that something matters to you less than what you just illuminated on. Who's lucky enough when they say to you, what's mattered the least in your 66 years on the Pebble, and you were able to just distill it in 1 second? Are you kidding me? For Christ's sake, Twitter dislikes me. Never have lives less lived been more chronicled than Twitter. And I'm supposed to put I'm supposed to suck the pipe because of that. For Christ's sake, can you imagine if we'd had Twitter in Dickensian England or around the mud hole back at the beginning of 2001? Can you imagine how vile it would have been?
Yeah.
Listen, if you make it through to, like I said, I'm 66, and you're still looking for the approbation of strangers. Well, I can't say much for me signals a life unlived. because I tend to give big credit. It's a big, scary goat fuck, and you got to navigate through on your own. But for me, if I make it to this age and I'm still looking to be liked by strangers, for Christ's sake, you wouldn't even have me on here. You'd go, that's that suck who's doing a non-punchline gig at a B. Dalton tonight. I don't give a fuck.
I always get worried when we have a guest on the radio show who's got the phone up and they're doing a FaceTime live or whatever while we're on the air. And I'm like, you're chasing an audience. That makes me nervous. That makes me feel like you don't have confidence in you enough to have them find you. You're chasing them. And I think it's killing creativity. I think Twitter, I don't even have a social media. I get pushed constantly by my company. Like, you got to get this. And I think it kills creativity because you're playing to one rather than to yourself and what you know is right. It drives me nuts when people will tell you what they want and people react to it. Who cares? You know you're good or you know you're not.
I've never had a core statement less embellished than right there. All of a sudden, you're writing Spencer's Gifts posters. What the fuck are you doing?
He finally got you.
Frank, exactly. That's all I was doing. He made sense there, but I thought, my man has just left a big fucking Bob Foster, Mike Corey hole shot for the left. Boom. No, it was genius. Really.
Is this the time I get to tell Dennis Miller to fuck himself? We talked about that. He said, don't do it. I said, I'm going to do it. He said, don't do it.
Bravo!
Oh, you finally did it. The
but don't tell Frank over there. For Christ's sake, he'll be curled up with Sylvia Plath's Dream Journal and fucking duvet this afternoon. Fuck up, Frank Caliendo.
Oh God, I haven't cried this much since Lovitz. I don't know if that's a plus or a minus for you, Dennis. But
how many women have said that?
Lovitz. All right. I got to rock, boys. Are we good? Or are you guys stay? What is this? One of those fucking all day things where you have to pee into a hip flask? You can't.
No, this is
marathon.
Good.
No, this is the first half. We'll get you back.
Well, I could stay for a little more. I don't know the confines of your gig, but I'm going to go have a little. What am I going to have for lunch today? A little clam chowder, I think.
Oh no,
but I'll stay for a few more if you got anything you want to ask me.
No, this has been awesome.
Your goal.
Yeah,
Thank you.
incredible. Yeah, thank you so much. And
Listen, Frankie, put a smile on that preface over there, okay? Life's not that bad. There you go.
I don't know. I went from enjoying you to being completely scared back to loving you again.
I was reading a book the other day about Noel Coward, and he met Truman Capote for the first time. He came home and he kept a bit of a diary. He wasn't that ardent about it, but he would put observations down. He said, met Truman Capote tonight. Not quite sure what that's all about. Has an interesting preface. Have you ever heard anything more dismissive than preface? It's like when Gore Vidal and Norman Mailer threw down on each other, and Mailer said, Vidal came at me with his tiny fists. I thought, oh, hell.
I'll tell you, I got scared when my email to you, because Christian, who helped set this up, who works with you, had said, I don't know Dennis with technology, how good he's with it and figuring out Zoom. So I walked you through the steps of Zoom just in case.
Yeah, you walked me through like fucking the pilot was dead and Karen Black had to land the 747, for Christ's sake. It's like, oh, you'll see a knob to your right, put a butter knife in there and turn it. For Christ's sake, it's Zoom. I hit 2 buttons.
I know, but he made it sound like that's what you need to do. This is the email I got back. I'm about to flip a coin to see if I take out a 30-foot or 50-foot restraining order against you.
I did write that. I just wanted to light you up a little before we got on.
And for the guy who it waxes poetic, your emails are the most contrite things in the world. It's just half a line initial for you, and you're out.
Well, listen, I got my quirks, man. I'm telling you, I'm a damaged fucker in some ways. But one of my great joys is to be with 3 other guys at a thing like this, and you feel like you didn't, their thing, I could never throw a football, I was never adroit with women. But I don't know about you guys, but when you can sit in a quartet like this and just bat it around a little, play pepper, and have fun, this is a super joy for me, man. It's good to meet you, Kat. I know Frank, but it's good to meet you, Kat.
You too.
Very
Dennis.
much.
Yeah.
All right, later, boys. I'll talk at you down the road.
Thanks, sir.
Have some
Thanks.
chowder.
Hey, Frank,
Yeah.
You don't leave the Zoom on and then clock me for the next 5 years, right? That's all I need is Big Brother, cherubic Big Brother in my room. Oh, Dennis was watching a show I didn't like. I'm going to have to open a vein.
Oh, God.
There's Dennis Miller, everybody.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That
that'll
was-
sweat you. That'll sweat you. Those are the types of there's a guest right there. That guy. What the fuck do you need us for?
Yeah.
That's
I mean,
exactly what you would have thought it would be, but
Yeah.
better.
I remember he had a guy on his show on HBO. I don't remember the guest. Maybe it was Norm Macdonald, and he reached over and he patted him and he goes, "When I met you, I knew you were funny, but as I got to know you, I kind of hoped that you'd be that guy." And he said, "And it's never been disappointing to me. You are the guy I want you to be when the fourth ball comes down." And that's exactly what he is. He's everything you want Dennis Miller to be, and then as a person, it's awesome. He's great.
I'll tell you, right in the first 5 minutes, I get a text from Michelle about problems going on in the house. I tune out my brain for maybe 10 seconds. I no longer know about 15 references he's made. I'm trying to catch up for the next 20 minutes on different things as I'm trying to figure out what
is going on in the house.
There's always.
How can that happen? That she's got to know. Problem solved.
I told, and it only had to do with lunch. It was just little things about lunch, and she's upset with Juliet about hating everything. But while doing that, Michelle is hating everything. And she can't figure out where Juliet gets it from. She literally said this earlier today, but because I've been trying to fix some things, she told Juliet goes, "You're not even listening to me." And Michelle goes, "Well, I wasn't interested anymore." And I go, "You can't do that to a 13-year-old. That's what Dennis Miller did to me 6 times on the podcast."
Frank, I met Dennis Miller 28 years ago. He insulted me terribly, and it was hilarious. And I finally meet him 28 years later, and he emasculated me even worse during this time. So, you know what? It was a perfect bookend. And I always say, did I expect Dennis Miller to be like patting me on the back and going, "What a good fella you are"? No, he's smarter than you. He's funnier than you. I want him to be that way.
Yeah, how
And he doesn't
disappointing would it be if Dennis Miller was like just a sweet, cherubic guy who really didn't really fire off a lot?
Yeah, it would feel fake. That's him.
Well, here's the funny thing.
Like
when I'm on his show, he's so complimentary. It's usually not face to face though either. I was enjoying it. I mean, I thought it was a lot of fun, but I was also like trying to process a couple different things. When I went into the Seinfeld thing, I didn't really have anything to say at that point. I was just trying to reiterate to get my brain to reset. And he called me on it. And I was thinking about halfway through, I'm like, should I cut that out? No, I'm leaving that in.
No way.
It's way too much fun. It's way too much. No, just I couldn't even think of it.
Yeah.
It was just redundant. And then I got into that story early too. That was the first time I got the text was with Bill Walton. I start to go into Mike, and he goes, "That's like 2 different balls talking to each other." And I was like, oh God, now I forgot what my story was because I love the line that he turned that ballot.
Yeah. No, he's about as good as they get. There's nothing. We should just cancel the podcast.
Right.
I really don't feel like any of us are that good. No offense to either of you. I know I'm not on that yet. That's where the level is, and that's where we need to just be done. There's the bar.
What did Rich say? Rich come in?
I said, yeah, I agree with John. Let's end on a high note.
Wow, that's not what I was saying. What a dick. I'm saying let's cancel the podcast. Let's act like it never existed. This will be the only one, and then we disappear from each other's lives.
Toledo, the high note might have been your volume control.
Yeah.
Because that was at a level that the Elephant Man could have heard, Chachi.
It's like the day they invented the cochlear implant. The guy screaming in my ear. I didn't even know what was going on, Billy.
Even Helen Keller's having a problem with it. Which is oddly who I was trying to think of when I said the Elephant Man. Helen Keller, Elephant Man.
And the Elephant Man. They look exactly alike.
Oh, sure. That was awesome.